So we're definitely going to be covering mostly the map assignment this lecture. A lot of the times, um, it seems like there's been a few missed points from the map and what's going on and how we're developing this even further. So I really just wanted to make sure everything is clear with this assignment, that this is something you're going to be building moving forward. This is what you're going to be working on in the foreseeable future for the next few months and into Project and Portfolio 3. So really take the time and the effort to plan this out now, because this is the design phase. Moving forward, you're going to be learning the skills you need to build this level. So we want to keep that in scope, right? A lot of us here are being introduced to Unity, and we're learning to script, and we're learning about game objects and components in the project that we have provided for you now. So we want to plan ahead and don't overscope ourselves, and still make something that's feasible for us to build in the amount of time we have. Hey Nate, how you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Doing well. I was just covering that tonight we're going to be going over the map assignment. So if either one of you guys wants to
Okay.
volunteer, we can pull up your map, and I'd really like to get a sense of where you're at in your mind with what you want your design to be, and really communicate that to us. So if you'd like, let me
Okay.
reshare this link. So I'll share a link with you. This is just meant to be a document for us to use to write down some notes and critiques that we have for each other. So for example, when John's walking through his area, or Nate's walking through his area, if the other has some notes they want to point out, or maybe Mr. Gazaway, or we write down some notes while you're communicating to us, we'll have a nice long chunk of feedback and different ways you can move forward with that. So that's what that document's all about. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up Perforce, and you guys, are you guys okay with pulling up your map and walking us through it? And we can discuss, where some things could be improved, or where the direction is moving in. And you guys all right with doing so when it's recorded for the classmates to see in the recorded version?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Awesome.
I don't mind either.
Cool. So, all right, I've got Perforce up. Who would like to go first?
Doesn't matter to me.
All right. All right, if there's no volunteers, I'm going to go with Nate. So let's see. You've got your stuff.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, so walk us through what you have going on in your map, and what you're planning on, what your vision is. And I'm going to do my best to follow along with my mouse. So just guide me through what you want the player to be doing
Okay.
from start to finish, and what the overall player experience is going to be. So let me make sure I got a good, um,
Okay. Um.
actually, let me just make sure I get a good setup. Let me know if you guys can see the map good for the recording. All right, does that look good for everyone?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
looks good here.
All right, awesome. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay. The kind of the overview of it was I had envisioned like an old technology universe, so like a science. So kind of running with that, I just thought it would have like what I think of when I'm at the university. The main. Um. I wanted to have the players, so I didn't want to have like the whole thing look like the same rooms. So have um, Big Bang Theory. So I watched the one where Sheldon has like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but he has like a secret office in the basement. So I kind of wanted to do something like that for the spawn point, and then have a basement area. So it kind of gives it like a darker like look to it. And the environment, like you can see on the sides here, like there's two go. Both sides are the same, but I just wanted it to be like a choice right out of the gate, even though it's not, doesn't really mean anything. Hazard signs there. The biohazards are meant to have like pipes that are running through like the basement for, I just kind of had them being like steam leaking out of them, kind of walk around so they get kind of, so you have to kind of walk through, and that's why there's health packs at the end so that they can just kind of learn the movement and then be full health as they're going to and then the part at the bottom there was like I wanted it to have opposite of the elevator that leads them up to the next floor. I wanted to have like a little room that could have been like another office on there, or just like a janitorial closet or something along those lines, and have it be like kind of blocked off, like some wood hanging down, and they have to crawl underneath it and then kind of find one of the parts.
Okay, cool.
Um, and then Yep, and then as they go up the elevator, I kind of wanted it to be like just a main lobby area.
Okay, so here's the
I didn't
elevator.
really have a way to like,
I transition to this floor.
yep,
Okay.
yep, and the elevator's at the top there. And Mr. Gas, I needed to make it more cohesive so they're all connected.
Yeah, well, one thing to
So
think
I,
about
I will
is
have to work on that
your
part.
elevator is here in this on this floor, so you would think that you can have your building be the similar structure, so your elevator should appear about the same location on this floor. Does that make sense?
Like on the bottom. Yep,
So if this is multiple floors, you want this, you can start with this shape as your frame, and then you would exit the same door on another floor, or it could be slightly
right.
different shape, but you would want it to start with the same location
Where
because
where I ran into issue with that, because like I was thinking that, but like to get to the next area, I didn't have like it would have to go, because
yeah,
like if I had the elevator on the bottom where like it was a similar size, like the entrance for the next area would be at the top, and it would just be weird.
yeah. Well, you just want to think that the player is going to actually be moving vertically in space. So what's it going to look like? What is the player going to see? And how is it going to be visually constructed? It's okay if you want these shapes to be how they are, but it would have to be
Mhm.
explained a bit further in more detail in the map, right? Like maybe this is the outside. This is like a courtyard area, and you go upstairs and you actually open this up, and now level 2 comes down here, right? You're moving this way through the building. That would make sense, but just how it's structured, it's tough to read and going to be challenging for you to build because right now there's just a lot of unanswered questions. But go ahead with where you're at with when the player enters floor 2.
Okay, so when they enter the second floor here, visual effect where that big indicator is there, that kind of renders that part of the room like where they can't walk, so it kind of forces them to go where I want them to go.
Okay.
Bottom there was just some visual like debris where they can't get through, and then I wanted them to have like a very obvious door on like the first of the circle, so they know that that's kind of where they have to go, and just kind of do some exploring within that like desk, like main like help desk area, and just kind of work their way through the rest of it and exit.
All right, so continuing on to, is this another floor or is this just another room?
Yep. And
What
then the
is,
next one here was it's just another room.
okay.
I have it like at the bottom, like at the very bottom of all like the things that say like basement floor, first floor, second floor.
Okay, right here. All right.
I just had a hard time making
Okay,
it
so
all
you're
mesh
breaking it
together,
out
so I have to
into,
work on you know
all right.
like sections for um and like this is where I kind of wanted to introduce like like the puzzles and like using like an actual object to like clear a path. Old like cafeteria type thing. Um, and I had fires still coming out of like the kitchen from like still valid gas lines or something like that. And there's a fire extinguisher in there, like it's the first arrow the player goes through, and they just kind of have to carry that with them and put out the fires as they go. Um, and then the objectives there. You see like there's a little the um, janitor cart are the last two items or the last two arrows there before they exit. So that's kind of what they're trying to get through to grab those and then progress to the next part.
All right. So once we grab this janitor cart, we move to the next floor of the building through the staircase, or is this through another?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's through. That was hard to do, but it was like through that door from the cafeteria leads to this first floor here, which is just like a little hallway for like the elevator and the staircase.
All right.
Where I kind of want to like reward the player for like searching a little more. So like the elevator, like you just go straight up. There's nothing to it, and you can kind of just progress to the next part, right? But around that corner there's going to be a tripwire that you're going to have to disarm. And then as you like, if that trips, I wanted to have like a health pack up top for them too.
Okay.
Or if they've taken damage from the fire and they spot that tripwire before they get rewarded and have a health pack up there. And I kind of tucked it down in the corner so that the players that took the elevator straight up, like with anything they miss, and just kind of see like the wall and they wouldn't see it tucked back in there.
All right. And so just so I
The
have it,
next room here
this
is
is here. This here
the
is your tripwire, right?
okay, correct.
Okay. All right. And now I make it up to this top floor or this area
Yeah, and
after
this
this elevator.
yeah the area. Yep. And then this here is like the goal of the player is to collect these elements for like a professor to help him conduct an experiment. And the elements are within the professor's office. So that's what this is here. It's a smaller room, but this is where the kind of like a puzzle built in with like his whiteboard where the professor was working with equations for like these unstable elements. And then have the periodic table there as well, and kind of have like some hints on the whiteboard that the player has to tie in with the periodic table, and those are the elements that they have to grab from his wall safe. Figure that out. Like I want to have like the really detailed, like every element on the periodic table up there, and then have some equations laid out, and so they have to kind of grab that, and then to the hidden items that they grabbed at the beginning will allow them to blow open this next door to get into the laboratory, which is the next one.
Okay. So here we are in the laboratory with the turrets.
So then the next, yep,
All
yep, and
right.
then the turrets here. So as they kind of blow open the door, they're gonna see that there's the turret there. I wanted to have like the purpose of the janitor cart and then the lunch trays and stuff was kind of to have like an object that the player can move forward, crouch their whole way through the room, so they can kind of like mount a tray on the front to block the laser from hurting them, and then move it like as they go. Um, but times you couldn't just stand there, so I was going to do plastic trays so the trays would like melt. So you only had like a limited time before the laser would get through and start hurting you. And then first turret there's more of the environmental hazards. Gas down there, one of the items they would have to pick up throughout the level would have been a fan. So it's with them as well, and they can kind of like use the tools as they go along and just kind of progress through. And then there's a couple checkpoints within there to help them like pull off to the side if they have to re-put a tray.
Okay.
And then this next part here was
Looks like here's more hazards.
were you gonna say something?
No, no, keep going.
Oh yeah, okay. So this part here is like a glass walkway type thing. as you see the picture. Um, I wanted to have like pieces of the floor be missing, as well as like broken glass shards kind of all over that the player has to avoid. And I wanted this part to be where the player like has to really control the movement. Very thin lines they're going to have to walk. And I did want some music playing in here because I figured it like as like a walkway, like one of the malls, local malls has one of these, and there's always music playing. And as they progress through here, this is the last part. So after this, they meet up with the professor, and that's the end of it.
All right. Um, so definitely a lot of different mechanics and a lot of um, good player interactions that you have going on. My first piece of advice I would start to think about
Mm-hmm.
before we think about the actual layout and the um, how it visually looks right now. First, we should think about what we're doing with our mechanics. So you have a lot of different elements going on here that I think that you can make good mechanics out of, but you don't want to have too many of them for very different reasons, right? So in this room, this is all about this fire extinguisher. So this is, keep in mind, these are all mechanics and things you're going to have to develop and implement and make sure they're, functioning and balanced and how you feel and how you like them. And then you need to create setups with them. So here we have this fire extinguisher that's going to interact with these fire objects, destroy a game object, have a sound effect, be able to progress through. Okay, so that's one setup. The other one we have going on, another one I noticed was like this tripwire. Uh, Another sounds like an interesting mechanic, and you want the player to interact with this in some way, but you have this one element here that is not being used in any other way throughout the level. I felt that this was use this tripwire once, and that was really it. And if John or Dax, you have any other comments that you wanted to jot in the Google Docs note, and Nate as well, as I'm going through this, feel free to take as many notes as you want for this portion. Um, and then also here, where was I? The whiteboard that I wanted to mention as well. Really cool, interesting puzzle. You have this space here that's all about figuring out these elements and having a puzzle behind the counter where that information would be, and the player needs to find these elements. That's going to be something else you're going to have to develop. And here you're doing it once, and that's really it. Then we move on, and you have a whole area where you're introducing turrets now. And that's okay, definitely acceptable to put turrets in, but think about how many other mechanics that you're going to be working with. And then we even get here to another room with some, a new mechanic with the glass objects that could break away or do damage to the player. So you have a lot of different mechanics going on in one contained area. So what I want you to think about is how you could make one or two of these mechanics really, really interesting and use that progression that we talked about from last week, the introducing a mechanic in one area, practicing it in another, and then mastering it in the third. So maybe, for example, you introduced a fire extinguisher in this first area. So there was a fire in front of this elevator. You had to smash some glass and get the fire extinguisher and use it. You just taught the player you can use the fire extinguisher to put out fires. And then later on, it becomes a little bit more challenging. So there's more fire, or actually obtaining the fire extinguisher is a bit more challenging. And the player needs to avoid fire, et cetera, et cetera. And then you could continue on with that progression. So I think just protecting you from yourself, not trying to do too many setups and too many mechanics. You may want to think about taking two or three of these and putting them in multiple places. Don't have these just one-off spots where you introduce a new mechanic and then you never use it again. Same thing here. And then definitely the layout of the map that we talked about a little bit. This is actually going to be what you're going to be bringing into Unity. So if to do a really good test of this, and yours is in layers, so it's a little bit more planning going into Unity, you'd want to save each floor as uh, a separate image so you can test that height. But think about how these areas are going to physically connect to each other. So maybe you'd have a hallway in between here, or you move the doorway to this portion of the building, and you have part of the wall collapse, and it can very easily flow into one another. but you really want to start planning before you even get into Unity about how these are actually going to connect as physical spaces. Um, Another note I'm pointing out, I'm not seeing the 15 collectibles placed throughout the map, and that definitely leads me into another point I want to make is just be careful of your long stretches of space that don't have much interaction going on, just the player walking. From the player starts, they
Okay.
just walk around some objects to get to the elevator. From the elevator to here, these long little stretches, you'll just start to notice. You want to start to make these a lot shorter and have interactions between, and they don't have to be like scripted events or, complex interactions. It can be just the key location and the key placement of some rigid bodies or a minor little setup, moving some objects out of the way to find a collectible. Very simple little setup, but keeping the
Right.
player progressing. Same thing here. I noticed it where your turrets are.
Right. I
Yes,
there
yes,
was
you have like a setup going on, but these long stretches where the player's just walking through a hallway, we want to have something else going on through there. What did you want to add?
okay. I was going to like I had originally I had 15 collectibles, but I looked in rubric for the assignment and it said 5.
Okay,
I don't like because I
I know the
recall I went to when
flowchart.
I was at the lecture before I thought you said 15.
Yeah, I know the flowchart says 5, and in the flowchart, I just want there to be those being the like the main items or like the important portions of them, the ones that may be a little bit more of a complex setup
Oh,
that's not just, move out of the way or
right.
jump up to an item
Okay.
and get it, but use the other ones, use all 15 of them to uh, use the player as a vessel to transport through the level. You're guiding them. You can very easily set it up to the player gets one collectible and how they're positioned or what way they're looking in the world, they can see the next one, right? And now it's just going from, I want to get this item.
Okay.
Now, I want to get this item. And you start to just navigate through the world, always knowing that next setup that's going on. And let me just look at your notes real quick. Uh, so pitch to me exactly what is your player goal? What's the player completing in your level?
The player is going to get to the professor's office and get those elements and then take them to him at the end of the level.
Okay. All right. So I think you have some good stuff here. You definitely want to reduce down. I think that's overall take a step back and look at what you've got going on
Okay.
and uh, evaluate your own skills with Unity
Simplify.
and with scripting and with building levels. You're actually going to build this out. And there's some spaces too
Okay.
now just the layout like I noticed this is a great spot of so here you have your first floor and your second floor. A lot of empty space that's going on, and it looks like if I'm a player, I could open up this door and just walk through this whole area. This is a big empty space without not that much going on. So you may as well just shrink this down, right? Move your elevator over a bit or move your
Yeah.
staircase to where you have a smaller little courtyard and you just don't want to have all this space to fill up visually and with actual setups. So um, I think like this hallway here is like a better example of what the density you would want, and maybe have add some more variety to some of these. And think about once you teach the player, use this item on this setup. Think about how you can make getting that item a little bit more challenging. And definitely once we go through the rigid body experiments, you'll have a better sense of any other little adjustments you can make. So. John, is there anything you wanted to mention? Any critique you wanted to give to Nate about his map? Things you may think he's doing right or you want to point out about something you noticed?
Not really. I like how every section has something happening in it for the most part. I just kind of feel like each room is like, as you stated, is a different mechanic.
Yeah. And these can all be mechanics that in the coming months you can develop and design on your own. And if you think you can get all of these in, always keep in mind too that this is going to be a team portion. This is portion of a team level. So maybe all these mechanics that you're designing could be pooled from your teammates. So you could be the third area of your level where you are practicing the fire extinguisher and you're introducing the glass material objects. You know what I'm saying? So all these mechanics that you are going to develop
Yeah.
could be incorporated in a whole team setting. But for right now, try and plan for a more linear experience where the player is using those skills over. So maybe you want to like cut one or two and have them almost as a wish list that if you get time to in the team classes implement this in to do so, and just know that this is going to be an always ever changing map as you're moving forward. It's going to be adapting now these next few weeks, and then after this class, when you get into the classes before Project and Portfolio 3, you'll be adjusting it and making tweaks based on how the implementation of your mechanics go. And then once you get together as a team, we want to stitch these together. So this is the type of stuff it would be nice and start to plan for, like here in the player start. You have this small little room, or this could be like a hallway or a small little some type of facility, and this could be a transition between another area. So definitely make sure you think about things like that and have one on the other side. And also make sure um, we want to make sure there's terrain in our map, right? Definitely make sure this is included. That's a guaranteed thing. You don't necessarily need to use it in your final level, but we need to have a basis of practicing those tools in upcoming months. So it could very easily be one of these buildings has a big window and you can look out and see the terrain that you've been working on. It could be something as simple as that, but just make sure you're accounting for that and have the ability to view a terrain object.
Okay.
Um, Dax, I know that you
That
had
was
some
kind of what I was thinking by having it be a glass.
cool. Yeah, that's definitely a lot of options. It really doesn't have to be anything elaborate where the player walks on it. But yeah, feel free to include that detail on the map. Like if you notice the example map that I had showed in the previous the previous week, and I sent it out as an announcement. The really good detail of what these walls are made of. Like right, like maybe you have in here some of these walls are concrete, and then some of the other ones are wood. Or there's you very clearly show in Google where your windows are, how far they're spaced apart. And the more detail you put into this, the easier it's going to be for you to build, because you're asking yourself less questions, and you're just going and you're building and you're implementing your design already. Dex, is there any other final thoughts you wanted to add about Nate's map? Anything I pointed out
Yeah,
that you wanted to talk to?
yeah. I have a few things. First, Nate, thanks for volunteering for this. I know it can be stressful to put your work up in front of everybody and let 'em- and I know we're being really rough this first week. This is the map rough. We're going into the map final, and the more feedback we give you, the more we tear everything down this week, or next week. So really, in the end, it is for the greater good. Um, I agree with basically everything Andrew said. One concern with this map is that I'm fairly certain, unless I missed something, and I don't think I have, that you couldn't actually make this in Unity. It wouldn't matter, so that walk from the beginning to the end. And progression is the number one thing we really need to get in and functioning flawless. I also agree there's at the same time too many mechanics and not enough mechanics. And I know that sounds weird and contradictory, but you're introducing an awful lot. We're targeting about 2 high scope mechanics, and I see probably 3 or 4, maybe even 5 in here that would be pretty difficult for you to implement. And I
Yeah, 1, 2.
low scope mechanics. Yes, simple things like jump over a fallen pillar. That's a mechanic, and that's a setup. Details in there, and so that we're hitting the player is doing something new and different, and mixing it up. So you're ducking under things, you're crawling over things. Maybe you have a place that you can't get over; it's too high. So you have to move a box that was blocking a door, and you move that box that had fallen over, and now you've done two mechanics with just one simple object. The implementation time for that kind of thing is going to be almost non-existent. Just place a body object and a few static meshes, and you're done. But you've gotten a mechanic out of blocking a doorway, moving an object, climbing up on top of something, jumping over. So placement that you don't have to worry about scripting, not a single script involved. So when you go back through this, play through your sandbox level, through your danger zone. We call it now, Andrew. We had a few
Yep,
names.
it's the danger zone.
Playground?
It's the danger zone.
Danger zone. Okay, play through the danger zone and look at all those base mechanics that you have require additional scripting, and then think of all the things you can do simply to fill out this level and make it feel without killing yourself with scope, because we want as little scope, as much fun as possible. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. One is actual viability of the level. Get it so that we can clearly see, to show a side view, like is shown in one of the there, show the reader how the player is actually going to physically move through this. That's really, really important. All right.
All right.
Any,
Yeah. Any
Nope.
questions,
I
Will?
think I got it.
All right. All right. Next
Nope.
contestant, John. Are you all right with showing off your map and walking us through it?
Sure.
All right. I like it. No fear.
game designers aren't allowed to have fear of review. It's just not in our vocabulary.
All right. So here we are. Player starts in the river. Whenever you're ready, take it away. Zoom in here.
All right. Well, the player starts on the left side across from the river, and basically the basic setup is to jump across rocks to get to the other side. Or you slip off. There's an optional trail to go south, which will have a hidden item. Either it'll be energy or yeah, it really depends on how the level plays out.
All right.
If you fall, how I have it set up in my mind is you're gonna have health, stamina, and energy. Grapnel and health and stamina. Stamina is going to be if you jump or run. It's going to take these pickups to replenish to keep going through the level. So once you get across the river, successfully by jumping, at the maze where you see the 5, you have to get past it. To do this, you need to get 3 different relics, which will blow up the door. They're at 3 different ends of the corridor. The one that's labeled 2, there's a turret, and basically you have to use your grapnel to block the turret shooting at you to get to the first relic. The corridor on the bottom that says number 4. There's going to be hazardous wastes, and you're going to have to use the grapnel to push the hazardous waste out to get that crate. And then there you'll find. And then the very top one, number 3, it's on a ledge, the relic is up there, and to get up on that ledge, you're gonna have that are around the map. And once you've gotten all 3 relics, you'll get through the door where it says number 5, bringing you to.
All right. Real quick, these items are your hidden stamina or energy pickups. That's what these items throughout the map are.
I have a description in the notes about what the maze looks like. There's going to be a ton of rubble. It's supposed to be collapsed buildings, but I kind of can't draw that in Google Draw. So now you're going to have to hop around, and there'll be collectible items that you can find that's going to be health, or not health, but stamina and energy as you're running through, so you can recharge to continue doing the. Yeah.
All right. So just overall, I like the concept of this area. Calling it a maze is what I don't personally think is a good choice. I think you can lay these out in a way where you can properly flow from one relic to the next. Um, One thing I think that's going to ultimately correct is like these long stretches where right now there's not much going on. So maybe in your head you're envisioning the player doing something. You want to include that in this portion of the map, right? You want to have all of your minor setups going on that's going to lead you to these major ones over here. So are these crate objects are what you would use to block the turret?
The crate item number 3, hidden item, you have to stack them because it's on a ledge.
Okay, so this is definitely a good opportunity. You'd want to play test this inside of Unity. So bring this into Unity and actually try to do this just on on a flat level where you're gonna pick up an object and now bring it all the way back over here to this point. And now you're gonna go all the way back around, come to this other object, right? That's what you're telling me you need both crates. So if that was correct, you'd need both. You'd backtrack twice. So just think about the layout of that path the player's taking, because anytime they're walking through the same play space that they've already been in, that excitement factor is slowly starting to drop. So you need to make that environment change or feel different, or just have it flow in a way where it feels like there's progression being made throughout the whole area. I like how you have each relic in a different setup. So I like that you doing one setup to grab this one, you have to beat a turret to grab the other, and then the other one went down here was, what was the number 4? Let me see. It's the hazardous puzzle. Hazardous puzzle. Yeah. So really nice different group of small mechanics like that. But I would overall just trying to readjust your layouts where it's not the player comes in and now they have 3 different paths they could take. Try and have it flow to where uh, one relic can lead to the beginning of the hunt for the next one, and that'll just eliminate some of the backtracking that you may not be fully accounting for yet. So and just before you go on, I just wanted to pick Dax's brain about what he thought about this energy and stamina concept. It's not actually something I've ever seen a student attempt to do, but we do have health implemented and working as a part of it. So the other elements would be something you'd have to develop yourself. Dax, do you feel that that's something you would be okay with and that fits within the creative vision of Scraps?
So it's really exciting. I think that's I've taught this class for a few years now, and I never once had a student suggest adding more attributes to the player. So that's really exciting to me. And there's some classes it's all about this stuff. However, for Scraps, especially when you get into the team building aspects of this, it's almost a team that has already developed their level in a way that it's going to accept those mechanics. And that's just the unfortunate nature. When you go onto any game as a level designer for that game, you have to accept just the base mechanics. Now, you called out a brilliant thing. I had never added that there is only one attribute to the player, and that attribute is health. But that is the case with scraps, is that there is only one attribute, and that attribute is health. So I think you need to love the idea. I mean, I'm a systems guy personally, and I did that. That's what I did in the industry. So I love the idea that you developed that, and I think it's great. And hang on to that for another. For this class, back off on that. Keep just the only attribute on the player. And then, however, though, when you get to your team class, you can think the implementation of those will be too hard. Really, you'll figure that out over the next few months, whether you're going to be comfortable with that or not. And if you find a team and you're like, hey, I want to add these extra attributes into the player, then I'd say go for it then. But wait until then to do anything like that. And I would plan on not doing it so much. Just keep it for a wish list for something else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's going to have conflict when I merge or combine levels with other players because they won't have the mechanic.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's not that it's a bad mechanic at all. I think it's a... But, you know, just like anything, like when I was on Spider-Man 3 and I was working on that, you know, we had the idea of some really cool stuff we could do with shooting, with, you know, different kinds of guns and stuff. Therefore, we didn't do it. The end. And that's kind of, you know, that's the same way the Scraps is. Scraps, the player has hit points, and that's it. So we stick.
All right, I'm going to have to redesign a lot of stuff, but okay, I'll continue that.
But yeah, and that's it. And I appreciate the creativity and introducing that early in the map rough. Because yeah, you want to take care of this stuff early on and not be stuck with the same problems because they'll just balloon as you try to implement. So
All right, though.
Should I continue?
Definitely good feedback. Yeah, go ahead with so exiting the maze.
All right. In front of them, down, it's going to be that long. It's going to have a sign saying left, which is top of the map, floor 2 stairs, right, power generator. Then they're obviously going to head to floor 2, or they might go to generators, but I'll just say they went to floor 2. There's going to be 2 turrets guarding it. They're going to have to use that center wall as they get around it and close to the state, which is going to have a locked door. That door is by turning off the power, so they'll have to go back to 7, which is the power generator. When they find out that there's power at the door, they're going to switch off the generator in floor 7. That turns off the lights. Then they have to use their grapnel to create light, which requires energy, but that doesn't matter. So as they create where the floor is open, and they go, as soon as they go to the 2nd floor, which is on the right side, they'll see the sacred relic that they're supposed to be picking up to go sell to for the bastion entrance. It'll be glowing, but it'll be locked behind a closed glass. This is at 9. And then, so they can't open it, but you'll need to turn the power back on to open it. But directly behind it, you'll see, because there's a window that's going to be lighting up a key on a desk next to Alpha Packet. So you go pick up the key, and then you move back to floor 1 to waypoint 7, or the note 7, where the generator is. You turn the generators back on, which turns the turrets back on, and light. You repeat. You go back to floor 8. You get past the turrets using your grapnel. At that door, you now have the key that you had picked up. The door, come back up. Then the sacred relic will be open at 9. So you pick up the relic. When you do that, alarm triggers. a countdown happens, that building, that gives the player the option of either A, jumping out the window at 11, but my plan was it was going to be on the second story. You'd have to have enough energy to use your drive. Or B, try and navigate through the turrets and get through the main door in time. But I also had endurance, so it create difficulty, but that's the gist of the level.
Okay. So a few notes about this last area. I like the idea about going between the floors. One thing you want to think about is don't just think about having stairs being the only way to get between one floor and another. I mean, everybody takes the stairs all day long. You know, going to work, you take the stairs. Maybe going down to catch a subway. You know, you take the stairs. But we do that all every day, all the time. Think about other interesting ways that the player could traverse between floors. Maybe, and then going from the second floor back down. So don't think of this staircase as your only access point, because then it's going to start creating this big looping where I go from the bottom. So I'm just going to say that this is south and the top is north, right? So I go from the south part of the building up to the north, take the stairs, come back down to the south, perform a player action. I'll go back up to the north, come back all the way down to the south. As you were describing and walking me through that, I felt like there was a lot of that back and forth. So you can try and eliminate that and have the area flow much smoother, but maybe having an area where the player can jump off the second floor and land onto the first floor in one area, or they could stack up some. They get the ability, maybe in this area there's some physics object that now they're able to stack up some object over here to create another staircase-esque platform to, that could be later on, so that could eliminate some of that back and forth. Um, and really you want to think about, overall what the player is going to be experiencing. So if they're just walking back and forth grabbing an item, how can we make that more interactive and more engaging? So you said the player is picking up a key, but we want to stay away from keys. That's definitely a big showstopper. We want to avoid having any type of key pickup. And in the common mistakes, we talk about avoiding literal key and lock setups, and you can read that to explain exactly why we want to stay away from that. But we want to go for more metaphorical type keys where it's the same functionality, but it's much more interactive and a lot better to experience, and shows more creativity in the design itself. I think just looking overall as the whole map, you may want to. I like the idea of maybe jumping out the second floor window to progress. Maybe include that in here about where exactly that would be. That could be a good progression to another student's area. But be careful. Like here, you have two ending points right now, and I think this is supposed to be like your ending point for your maze, but just make sure you only have one so it's very clear where your area ends, and think about how it's going to connect to another area as well. And if you do go with that idea of breaking out of the window and you maybe land back outside, you could consider making this area itself, this outdoor area, think about how you're going to build your terrain object. Maybe it's encompassing the majority of your building, so you could jump out and end up on the other side of your terrain. And think about too, designing exterior is much different and more to think about than designing interior. So if I'm looking at your map, and so the player is facing east, so if I look to the west, I look behind me, what am I going to see? Right now, if I'm looking, just by looking at your map, I'm guessing I'm going to see just the edge of the world. And we want to avoid that. We want to plan exactly what's going to be needed for the whole level, not just the play space. So right here is where you want the player to interact and experience, but you have to account for much more area. And it's just a good habit to get into doing it now, because you'd probably try and block it out with something. You put up a large wall, and now it's just you're starting to guess and don't know what it is that you want in that space, what your mind is envisioning. So try and plan that out here. Maybe you have some forest with some hills, or you have some large boulders, or some type of where is this? What is this river near? What's going on? And how can you make it believable all the way around. Any questions at all? Anybody else want to add anything? Nate, do you have any suggestions that you want to give John? Really, it's open mic to anyone that wants to chime in.
I just think there's a lot of like walking to an area, then walking back, and then walking to the area again. So I would try to make it less like go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Just simply move those things in closer to where they need to be. A little bit of moving things around is great. A lot of walking back and forth is going to get some more density in here. Again, simple setups, just little things keeping the player going every 10 seconds. Another thing to keep them mix up, they kind of block the camera a bit. So keep in mind the size of objects and the amount of navigation. It's really hard to walk with something in front of the player's face. It's in third person, you're pulled back a little bit, but still, it blocks the camera some. So keep that in mind too. And then, yeah, these open spaces, the big blue open spaces, add in there just to make it more dense. Same notes I gave to Nate, things to tip over, things to knock down and pull away. Just more small setups.
Agreed. And definitely when you, if you guys should take a look at the rigid body experiments that are on Perforce in the content folder, starting to understand rigid bodies and constraints and how you can interact with the gravity gun, hopefully will shed a new light on that as well, and how you can do these simple setups that we're talking about without, the thought goes into where they are in the level and how they're constructed and how the player is going to see them and interact with them. But that's the tough part where the creativity comes in, because they're not technically challenging. It's just you have to understand what the components are, and that's what the rigid bodies are all about. So overall, do you guys
Yeah,
have?
that pretty much covers my notes.
Cool. Do you guys have any other questions at all about the class at all? I know we should be working on the entryway and the turbine experiments by now, submitting those, soon. And then really the focus, the rest of the class is about the map and making sure you have a good design moving forward, because this is the building blocks for a few other classes. So this is a very important important piece of the class. And then after that, it's really the rigid body experiments and test is the next major thing after that. But this is going to be the focus for the next week. So anyone that wants feedback and wants to walk us through your level, definitely get in contact with us, because we'd like to give you as much feedback as possible. And anyone that would be watching this recording, think about how you can take the advice that we've given John and Nate and we talked about with the maps, and apply that to your own areas, because a lot of the maps will have some overlapping issues. And I'll post that link to that document if anyone wants to continue to write some critiques for your peers. I know it's going to be really helpful, and it's good practice to get into for both sides. Accepting criticism and accepting feedback for your work, as well as being able to write it and express your intentions in a professional and clear way. So, any other final thoughts before we wrap up for the night? John, Nate, you guys have any? Have you guys started the turbine experience at all? Having any issues with Unity in that sense?
I'm okay.
I'm doing okay too.
All right, awesome. Well, if you guys need help with that,
Well, I want to thank you guys again for volunteering.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, definitely very good point. Thank you much for that. Very appreciative. So now we can have a good basis of what to work on going forward. All right, so if there's no other questions, I'll wrap it up for the night. Make sure you reach out to us. We're here to help you guys with any questions you have for the class, as well as Unity Lab. Always make sure you have that, in the back of your mind. You can go there if you ever have any questions or problems with Unity as well.